I'm being joined tonight by a former presidential candidate and a political economist, Professor Utomi, who joins us virtually from the United States. Thank you so much, Prof, for joining us tonight. Prof, can you hear me?
I can hear you so clearly. You need to raise your voice.
All right. I should increase my voice like the price of petrol. So if that's the case, all right, so that there can be an equilibrium. All right, but can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you, yes.
Yeah, I mean, that was a very painful and expensive joke that I make there because the price of petrol is probably one of the painful things that any Nigerian can feel today. But would you say you saw this coming?
Well, Shehu, this thing is more complex than seeing or not seeing coming. Clearly, when you get into the kind of situation that we have gotten into, you need a lot of planning to engage. And because we didn't do all the necessary planning and put the appropriate measures in place, because we didn't clarify our strategy, we are running into very, very serious problems. See, first and foremost, I think that the typecasting of what is subsidy has put us in a bind. I probably would have begun by trying to clear up the mess in the industry, in NNPC. Believe me, NNPC is one of the most opaque and most unreliable organizations in the world. Go to me any day. I've been writing and talking about this for a whole generation. I still remember my 1998 book and the quotes on NNPC from it. What we call subsidy, a good part of it was obviously graft. What we call smuggling. I mean, if you look at the way the numbers oscillate, how much we consume, look at what we consumed just before COVID. And then when movement dropped under COVID, the numbers just multiplied significantly. It will tell anybody who is serious that it is not because more petrol was consumed. There are statistics. Compare Pakistan, California, I've done that before, Nigeria. California, where almost everybody has a car, in terms of ratio of citizen to petrol consumed. And Nigeria, where few people have cars, forget about how many cars are jammed in the streets of Lagos, but very few of our population have cars. And look at the number of units of petrol that we say are consumed there. So we want to begin first by, before we punish citizens and pass on inefficiencies to them in prices, clear out the corruption in the system. That alone, I think, will bring the thing down dramatically. Then you have to make a choice about strategic use of resource. Look, of its own, subsidy is not a good idea. But there are times when to drive production, to keep quality of life at certain levels, you make a commitment to some levels of subsidy. We know that agriculture is massively subsidized in the United States and in Europe. But this is a subsidy that drives production and puts, therefore, more money in the hands of some people who produce and therefore enables the system to keep running. But when you massively subsidize consumption for pleasure and stuff like that, when people don't have to give thought to how they use the resource, then you're not doing what is best for the system. This is where we're stuck, because we didn't deal with the heart of the matter first.
So what would you...
We just jumped to, oh, the subsidy is bad. Everybody will tell you that.
What was it that we were supposed to have done at first?
That's what I'm telling you, what should have been done. The first thing is you clean up an NPC, and you would have reduced the so-called subsidy, in my view, by more than 60%.
Is it too late to do that? Is it too late to do that? If you were given that job to do, where would you start from, Prof?
It. If I'm given the job, I can do it. I've been saying it for years. Look, then the next thing, by the way, you know, if you go to the World Bank and the IMF, they will throw policies at you, which are basic templates. No problem. That's a good understanding of economics. However, every situation is different. Now let's go back to Malaysia during the Asian financial crisis in 1997. Look, one of the things I'm hearing now is going on in Nigeria. Oh, they're telling them in Washington that the tax to GDP ratio is terrible. So they need to increase tax dramatically. Somebody was telling me here in Washington yesterday that they are planning a massive increase of tax because the tax to GDP ratio is so low. And I said, these people who tell you these things, do they understand your economy? The average person in the Western world who pays those taxes, very important that he pays it, has no other commitment besides themselves. The average Nigerian middle class person is the social safety net that the country does not have. He's paying school fees for X number of people. His entire extended family depends on him. That is taxation. If your book doesn't call it taxes, then person doesn't understand his economics. So how do you program those and take them into account in computing how you change tax rates and all of that? These are the kinds of conversations that you need to put on the table. And so I'm saying that if you just take numbers they throw at you from NNPC and say, okay, therefore, jack up prices by so much, you will just be burdening the people who are overburdened. And you know, what you need when investments are not taking place is to free up money for investment, for savings, for investment. People are bare bones now, they can't save. If they can't save and they can't invest, they're just in a vicious circle going downwards. So I think that we do need serious reflection on where we are in the process and what we must do first. There's a sequencing problem, and we're not managing that properly. That's why it is so hard on people.
All right. So I'll come to aspect of solution because you touched on that early as per what NNPC, the role NNPC is playing in the whole scheme of things. And those who will say it's now a private interest, and in a capitalist system, it should play its role without any encumbrance, and the market forces should be at play and also play its role just like any other oil and gas company. But then it plays more than that. In reality, it's the sole importer of the product in the country, except now that Dangote is now producing locally. But the question here, Prof, is that the government, for the first time, is speaking up about this matter. We've not heard the federal government speak up about this matter. They are making explanation, and the vice president has summoned the NSA, the minister, and the MPCL GCEO. That explanation, you heard part of it. Did you buy it?
Yeah, I mean, we really need to sit down and seriously engage on the matter. Security is a very important part of it, because all the story about how much petrol goes out of Nigeria's borders is cockamamie. Look, with a simple technology thing, you will see every car that leaves Nigeria's borders, not talk of petrol tankers. So when they tell you that this is how much is consumed in Nigeria, this is how much is smuggled, it's a major security issue. Is there complicity? Perhaps there is. If we want to deal with that, we deal with that. If we then deal with security issues and deal with the corruption issues in NNPC, we would then say to consumers, look, this thing is about our output, and our output does not justify our paying nothing for petrol. So perhaps we're going to introduce these kinds of public transportation for all kinds of people, quality public transportation. Many people, look, in 1984, I went to visit Zimbabwe for the first time. I had a classmate in the US who was the executive director of ZIPAM, the Zimbabwe Institute of Public Administration. He came back from the US, bought a nice house on Mount Pleasant, but he couldn't buy a car because that was a priority at the time. He bought a 1956 Maurice Minor. And during the day, the weekdays, he would take a bus to work. On Sunday, he'll bring out his Maurice Minor and drive his family to church. We've got to say to ourselves, if we have this quality of public transportation, fueling it at this kind of level, subsidizing that kind of fueling, if you want, for partying sake, then you pay a different kind of price for petrol. But let's not punish ourselves and shut out productivity possibilities out of the resources that need to go to specific areas going there. That's what we seem to be doing. And it doesn't work right. We need to talk and sort out this problem once and for all.
So, in essence, the explanation the government is giving on one hand, the plight of the Nigerian people on the other hand, whether or not the government is explaining the situation of things, does not take away the fact that the price of that commodity is what it is today, different from what it was yesterday or 1 week ago. It has increased. What it then means is that immediately, prices of some commodities have jumped by 300%, some by 200%. Now, there are those who are asking for government to rescind that decision, and there are those who will say, look, government does not even have the power to fix those prices. Dangote is saying government is a deregulated and a very coordinated market. So it cannot also determine the price, especially the fact that he is producing. But the question is, can government rescind it? If government will not rescind, how can we manage? Already, naira to the dollar is about 1,600. Inflation is what it is right now. It means that there is an implication directly on the economy. Are we between a hard place and the rock, or between the sea and the devil, or where exactly are we right now, Prof?
We're in between all of those. And we made some very terrible mistakes. And we've got to try and work our way back. But how do we work our way back when public officials are seen as splurging? We've got to show dramatically that the public sector, the leadership, have done a mea culpa on their flagrant abuse of the public treasury. Then people will say, okay, these people have shared all this load. Again, I keep giving the example of President Obasanjo coming down to Peugeot 504, saying, look, oil prices have dropped, 1976 or thereabout, or 7. We cut our coat according to our cloth. So everybody, head of state is going on Peugeot 504. Everybody else is going on something lower. I'm not seeing people accepting government and saying to them, look, things are tough. Sorry, you have to pay this. When public officials are living in homes that are powered by generators, that the diesel is paid for by the public, and there's power 24/7, and they are flying in new jets, and no, we have to come together as a society and say, our country has done things wrong with policy, we have to rebuild. And this is how we rebuild. This is how everybody sacrifices. You go out there, get 1,000 brand new buses of different qualities, put them out there, park your car. Look, I've seen Nigeria go through phases. When I was growing up, there was a time when Lagos was so congested that you were not allowed to drive into Lagos Island. So you parked your car at Urile or something, got into these Scania buses and entered the island. Big man, big man. And all of these are the kinds of things we need to collective shedding, beginning from the top. The first must be the top. Shed all that load. No more motorcades. No more this. No more. The people can take you seriously. And we know that the country is collectively trying to solve a problem, mistakes that we made. That's really all that can make this work.
Yeah. I mean, the job of a president of Nigeria is not one that anybody should pray for at this time. It's probably the most difficult one, because I imagine any president, anybody who becomes Nigeria's president at this time is going to be having sleepless night, and is going to need some medication to be able to afford a sleep, because Things are really bad.
We caused it. The Nigerian political class collectively is responsible for the Nigerian misery. The country's political class has failed the country. I mean, look at the choices we have repeatedly made. Look at the kind of National Assembly we have. Look at the kinds of behavior of the executive branch. The political class needs to come out publicly and do a mea culpa before the country. In Southeast Asia, people will come out and do a humiliation bow for what the public has suffered as a result of the irresponsibility of the political class in Nigeria. That's a starting point.
Yeah, Prof. Let's. I'm all about solution tonight because we are in that situation.
Oh, no. Don't joke about this. It's a solution.
Yeah.
Because the people feel disconnected from the political class. That is a major solution.
And I agree with you. If you were President Bola Tinubu,
feels what they are feeling, we have started solving the problem.
Yeah, I mean, if you were President Bola Tinubu, although you're lighter in complexion, but you are a good friend of his, you can read his mind. But if you were in that same seat and that position, I guess that your political economist part of you will be activated right now. But to salvage the situation and to wrap up this conversation, what would you do if you were in his shoes right now?
Well, the first thing to do is recognize essential things that Nigerians need fuel for. I will subsidize whatever it is we choose to call it, those things.
So that means that you are going to bring back subsidy. Is that what you're saying?
I don't care what you call it. There's subsidy, there will be subsidy. I've just told you that the Americans have subsidy for agriculture. It's a matter of where you direct it to. Is it something that will produce, that will help us rebuild? If it is something that will help us produce and rebuild, by golly, I will subsidize. But if it is something that will let us frivolously consume, I will not do that. And I will show example. There was a Latin American president that used to run around in a Volkswagen Beetle. I mean, that was a showing of commitment. So let our politicians not think that, oh, befitting. Befitting what? Public resources are limited and must be treated as something that the people have in short supply and therefore managed extremely tightly by the political class.
But Prof,
look, if
you reintroduce subsidy, will it wind back the end of inflation? Will it reduce prices of commodity that is skyrocketing?
There are things you've got to do all kinds of things about to reduce price pressures. Produce food. Once you produce plenty of food, the price pressures will come down. But we're not doing enough to stimulate food production. So in January, I gave this advice. I said, look, legumes take 3 months. If we are serious and want to prevent this inflation from taking off, let us cut off certain areas in the country, put soldiers permanently there, and get farmers to go in, incentives. Within 3 months, there'll be plenty of food all over the place. Prices will drop. Did anybody do that? Look, we need seriousness and not just talking. That's what the problem is.
All right. Professor Utomi, as a political economist, thank you so much indeed for your time tonight and those thoughts that you have shared. And I hope that those who require some of this insight to be able to change things around will take them. They're for free for tonight. Isn't it, Prof? You're not charging us. But thank you so much indeed.
At all.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. So we'll
we'll
take a break. But when we come back, a man who thought that he could do a better job than President Bola Tinubu will be joining me next to give insight into how we navigate ourselves out of this. Join us again, everyone.